good evening. This is Houndog Steve wishing you a very pleasant evening, and I wish this could come to you under better circumstances, but I am talking about the unmitigated disaster that is unfolding in Afghanistan right now. It is basically, it's hard to know where to begin because the things that are happening over there will have such long-term consequences, possibly destabilizing in the whole area. This is an absolute game changer. But even at smaller levels, you're going to see that women will no longer be allowed to go, or girls will no longer be allowed to go to schools. It will be all religious schools for the boys. Women will have to wear a full burqa, which causes all kinds of health problems. And you're going to find gays are going to start being thrown off the tops of buildings. Either that, or you get to choose. So you can be stoned to death, or you can be thrown from the top of buildings. So you've got a few seconds to contemplate what the hell just happened. Okay, so there's going to be an absolute upheaval at the base level of society. But now that they control the whole of Afghanistan, they control the pipelines, all of the energy pipelines, the weapons. There is an article here from RT where the weapons admits they left a few weapons behind. There are over $2 billion worth of high-tech weaponry, state-of-the-art machinery, planes, Humvees. They have all the facial recognition data, so there is a purge going on right now. They know all of the people that helped the US whilst they were in Afghanistan, where they live, their families. So you are going to see tens of thousands of people killed by the Taliban. The possibility of those weapons leaking out, Afghanistan shares the border with Pakistan. There is the Kashmir situation, which is always waiting to raise its ugly head. These high-tech weapons could easily shift the balance of power in that area. On the other side is Iran, and they're already putting pipelines up through Syria into the Mediterranean. The only other thing that could happen to the US now that is worse is that the Taliban decide to make you pay in Bitcoin for all of those resources that they now control, although the Taliban always did control those resources. And please don't misunderstand that the Taliban are not just a ragtag bunch of warriors. This is a political movement, and they have access to scientists, advisors. They liaise with other countries just as any other government would. So don't be fooled when you see some of these antics shown on YouTube of people, they can't clap hands and jump with the legs apart at the same time. That may be for the rank and file, but the upper level governors and so on and so forth, oh yes, they're leaders, no doubt about it. Even the leader got a quip in when he was asked about, the fact that they would be suppressing freedom of speech. He flew back and said that, well, what about Facebook? Who are you? Who are you to criticize my freedom of speech and so on and so forth? When, Facebook won't allow freedom of speech, or Twitter. And the Taliban have a Twitter account, if you could believe that. Donald Trump does not have a Twitter account. He was banned, but the Taliban have a Twitter account. And all of this can be laid at the feet of one man, and that man is Joe Biden. Okay, this deal was already worked out. May 1st was the pullout. Donald Trump had brokered a deal where they could remove all of their equipment before they evacuated, which would mean that none of this would have happened. But Joe Biden pushed that date on by 6 weeks. And that might not sound like much, but over there, you see, in the US and Canada, if you welch on a deal, oh, well, get a lawyer, go to court, it'll get settled that way. But over there in Afghanistan, in fact, all of the STAN countries, your handshake is your bond, and you break your deal, there are raiders coming over to get you, man. Like this is the way it works over there, okay? And to break that deal, it gave the Taliban the opportunity to go around to all of those tribal leaders and go, hey, we told you couldn't trust the Americans. and here you go. Of course, the Afghani army collapsed almost immediately, and who wouldn't? The Taliban still, rule or govern, huge swaths of Afghanistan. It's a huge country, and, there was only really a stronghold in Kabul, Kandahar, and that was about it, and a few, but the rural areas were still very much controlled by the Taliban. And of course, as I say, you virtually have a porous border with Iran on one side, Pakistan on the other. So who knows what influences this will have throughout the whole of the Middle East. And the blowback, the egg on the face of the Americans right now. Were there no policy advisors? Were there no policy advisors to talk to Joe and get him over his arrogance? Surely somebody could have told somebody. There is a huge LGBTQ quorum in the White House right now. Who's speaking up for all these gay people getting flung off buildings? I thought you were opposed to that kind of thing. Where are all the feminists opposed to the burqa and the loss of women's rights and young children, young girls especially, not being able to go to school? Where are those voices? I don't hear those voices. Is it because you are just a basically milquetoast feminist and LGBTQ personality? That you just virtue signal, but you don't really want to, when the going gets tough, you don't want to do anything to speak out against this nonsense? Well, we're going to see this unfold in real time, but trust me, this is a game changer. This is a game changer right now. You forget about CV. This is a game changer, and it will go on for decades. Trust me, it will go on for decades. And I hope that Joe Biden is taken out of office. Article 25. He is unfit to govern. This man is a dangerous individual. He's unfit to govern. And, poor old Jen Psaki. I don't know what. Anyway, I'm just going to read you this quick clip from RT. It's not very long, and then we'll come back and we'll do a quick wrap-up. Okie dokie. Here we go. And this from RT. White House admits fair amount of US weapons fell into Taliban hands. President Joe Biden's National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan had to admit that a lot of US weapons intended for the Afghan army are now in the hands of the Taliban, brushing off questions of how the US intends to deal with it. We don't have a complete picture, obviously, of where every article of defense materials has gone, but certainly a fair amount of it has fallen into the hands of the Taliban, Sullivan said on Tuesday, briefing reporters at the White House as Press Secretary Jen Psaki looked on. And what they're not mentioning is all of the stuff that the US forces were using themselves, not just the stuff that they were giving to the Afghan army. Sullivan was also running damage control for the White House on Monday, hours before Biden was brought back to Washington from Camp David to change the narrative about the US withdrawal. Addressing questions about scenes of helicopters evacuating US embassy personnel in Kabul in echoes of Saigon in 1975, Sullivan argued that the helicopter had been our mode of transport from the embassy for 20 years. The US has spent over $80 billion over the past 20 years arming and equipping the Afghan National Army, the fighting force loyal to the US-backed government in Kabul. Yeah, US-backed, loyal to the US-backed government, The US also paid their salaries, allegedly leading to local commanders reporting ghost soldiers that didn't really exist in order to line their pockets. While Biden and his generals insisted that the ANA was a capable fighting force that could hold off the Taliban, it ended up surrendering without a fight over the past weekend, catching the Pentagon and the White House by complete surprise. As I said, who couldn't have seen this coming? Come on. What would you do? Of course, that would be common sense, right? Major General Hank Taylor, an operations chief at the Joint Chiefs of Staff, had no answers for reporters who asked the Pentagon briefing on Monday about the captured weapons. Asked whether the US was doing anything to prevent the weapons and equipment from falling into Taliban hands, Taylor said he didn't have information about such steps. I don't have the answer to that question, Taylor responded to the question of whether the US was doing anything to destroy the abandoned equipment, including bombing the ANA bases. Taylor and other Pentagon officials actually denied any such US airstrikes have taken place. So there you go. There you go. They have no idea. This could have all been, even in that 6 weeks, even in that delay of 6 weeks, is somebody trying to tell me that the US Army is not capable of moving equipment from one base to the airport, get it loaded on a plane. It came there. It got there somehow. So, this is ridiculous. This stuff could have been let loose and got off out of the hands of the Taliban, and none of this would have happened. And in fact, if Joe Biden had stuck to the May 1st deadline, none of this would have happened either. So there you have it. Quite a lot of armaments were left in Afghanistan, and there's no plan to get them out. And another issue that they're not talking about, I don't know whether you saw these horrifying pictures of helicopters taking off at the US Embassy in Kabul, at the airport, people running alongside the plane. There were people who actually grabbed hold of the wheels, the undercarriage, as it was taking off and fell to their deaths. These are people who are going to be killed by the Taliban. And the US government recruited these people and promised them that they would be safe. And just to finish off my thought, of course the Taliban army defected. As I said, the Taliban control huge swaths of area. You're fully armed. You're trained. What are you going to do? Oh, I think I'm going to join Taliban. So they just switched sides. And they took all that weaponry with them as well. So now the Taliban has that's I think what Joe Biden said, a 300,000 man fighting force, all fully armed and equipped. Hey, that ain't bad going. That's not a bad haul. And yes, we will be paying for this for decades and decades. And in the meantime, this is Houndog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we'll talk very, very shortly. You take care now. Bye.